What's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America Show. Host Rob Norm, streaming on all platforms finally again. We're on X, we're on Kick, we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube Shorts, YouTube, and Twitch Shorts, YouTube. Oh, one second. Twitch Shorts, YouTube. Oh, little feedback there. What? Oh my goodness! It's been so long. It's great to be here. I've been sick, I've been busy, life's been crazy, my family's been sick. Oh my goodness, the power went out at my house. You know what that means? I didn't even notice. There we go, we're live on air. My goodness. My goodness. We're back, baby. Plan on jumping in with both feet. Now, little bit, the echo should be gone, correct? Am I right about that? Let me know if you all still hear that echo. I noticed that at the beginning. We should be good now. But now I'm still a little sick, but I'm good enough. Here's what you probably won't hear. My tremendous singing voice probably still hasn't came back. Other than that, we're good to go, right? Yeah, I've missed you all too. I have. I miss streaming. There's been a lot going on. Unfortunately, not only have I not been streaming, I haven't been keeping up very fluently on the news. I did one stream there last week kind of explaining my situation. I will re-explain here, let you know what's going on, what you should look forward for me coming up, and then we'll jump in. I'm in a very good mood today, so I don't know how angry I'll be. This might be one of the shows people don't like because I'm in a good mood instead of just yelling and screaming at everything. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I had some sort of illness. So first off, for those that don't know, I do home health care with adults with disabilities. A lot of times what you're dealing with people that are in medical facilities like that, even though it's sort of the way my company works is, it's basically a person's own home. The company keeps up the utilities. In this case, the company owns the home, but it's the person's home. They make the decisions for their own home, with decoration and the type of stuff that goes on in the home, etc. But still, individuals that usually have those kind of service sometimes have compromised immune systems because there's a lot of medication that's going on, or there's other medical issues that are going on that mean that if they get the flu, sometimes that's more difficult than if just a person living in their own home gets the flu. In addition to that, a lot of the people are older. And you know how that is. Getting the flu when you're 30 is different than getting the flu when you're 65. And so those could make things more challenging. And that's been the case with some of the individuals I work with, where there's just been a litany of illnesses that are going on. And now the way it works in my particular home where I spend most of the time is we have one other employee. And think about how this happens. Let's say that someone gets sick in the home you're working at, home health care. And there's basically, I'm there half the week, another employee's there half the week, and then the person we serve is there the full time. You're going to get sick if someone else in the house is sick because you can't avoid each other. It's just the way it is. So you all pass around the same illness. But then you go home to your families, and that probably means you're dragging that illness there. But if your families have an illness, then you're probably dragging that into work. And I think what happened is that the illness that spread at my work 2 weeks ago was different than the illness that spread at my home. And so I think I basically caught both illnesses. And my guess is one was a virus and one was a bacteria. And so the effect of that has been a pronounced, it hasn't been like incredibly miserable. There was the first half of my illness came with fevers and what have. The second half, it was just congestion, coughing, no fever though. And unfortunately, some of the people in, the home where I work, they've got it rough. Like the illness has treated them worse than me. So it's just been very sick, but also very busy, particularly with work and even at home with my family being sick. It was a real bummer for my son. He turned 4 on January 9th. He had a big birthday party Saturday. And unfortunately, he was just getting over being ill. And you know how that is. Even you're not coughing as much, you don't have a fever, but you're still very tired. Like your body's still, you know. So the poor man, he got real tired by the end of his birthday party. And yeah, that's what I'm saying, Joseph Wilson. Didn't kill me, made me stronger. My immune system's crushing it now. So, and my son's in a good mood. So I think we've turned the corner. And I'm finally able to jump in with both feet to the streaming stuff with one caveat, which I'll give you here in a minute. As intended. Now, what's that going to mean? I'm going to try to be putting out a unique short every day. In addition to the shorts my editors are putting out, at least one a day I'm going to be trying to put out. Trying to stream every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then as much as possible on those other days, even when I'm working. So that's the plan going forward. We got new types of shows that are going to be coming. I'm going to be talking to Black Elk, who's my editor, but also basically taking on a producer role with the show. It's coming up with some ideas from different shows. We're going to do different guests that we're going to have on, things of that nature. So the plan was always take a little break around Christmas and then jump in right after the New Year. Unfortunately, the schedule of that's been put off roughly 2 weeks just because of this illness and being busy. So I do apologize for everyone, but I guess at least it occurred over a time. You know, we haven't had Trump's inauguration yet. He hasn't been sworn in. People are probably spending time with their friends, family, over the holidays, Christmas, New Year's. So, sucked to be sick. Wish I could have been spending more time with you all, but happy to be here. So, that's the idea. Now, the plan is to stream tonight, tomorrow night. Friday, I'm probably going to do one of the daytime shows, like 8 or 9 in the morning. I'm very excited for this weekend. I have a doctor appointment, nothing serious, Friday. Unfortunately, living in a rural area, a lot of the times if this doctor happens to be for my back, which is still screwed up, so I have to drive like basically an hour to get to a doctor appointment that's a back specialist, but no big deal or anything. Anyways, after the doctor appointment, my wife, a good friend of hers, is actually having sort of a bridal shower type thing this weekend, and she's not going to be here. She's going to be spending a night or two up with her friends. And so that means it's Dad and Hank time, and I'm very excited. So we got a whole weekend of crappy movies planned out that we're going to watch. We got a giant Play-Doh set that we're going to get into and make a huge mess. I'm very excited. I love when I get to spend time alone with my son. Probably because we're just getting over being ill. We're probably not going to go play in the snow, but I can't wait to do that, hopefully next week or thereafter. So I'm very excited. So I will be streaming tonight, tomorrow night, Friday morning, and then the rest of the weekend it's going to be Dad and Hank time. So I'm not going to be on X. I might check it once in a blue moon, but I try to, like, especially when it's just me and Hank, make sure my phone's sort of put off to the side. That's sort of the goal. So, but thank you for all the well wishes, saying that people are that happy to see me back. I'm happy to be back as well. So, also I'm streaming on Vertical on the YouTube Short platform as well. Unfortunately, for those of you watching on the YouTube Short platform, you won't be able to see the chat. So everyone else can see the chat that's there on the right. But for those that are on the YouTube Short platform, unfortunately won't be able to see that. So what to talk about today? Well, if someone has something pressing that they would like to talk to me about, we could always open up the phone lines to talk about that. I thought that I wanted to talk about something positive today. It's something that I had seen. Now, granted, there's so much that came out. I haven't had a chance to read the Weiss report on the Hunter Biden investigation. I haven't had a chance to read the report on the Trump investigation from Jack Smith's office. I know there was a lot of testimony going from Trump's hearings with Trump's picks that was going on. I saw little snippets of that, but I didn't get a chance to watch all of that like I would want. So I've been a little weak when it comes to keeping up with stories. Two stories that I wanted to cover. I wanted to talk a little about one particular issue that I see with the California fires that I think is worth bringing up. And then I also wanted to talk about this story that I saw. It's a very complicated story. It has to do with Chris Rufo, who I really like, and sort of the general idea, sort of is piggybacking off the H-1B argument that you saw on social media, which is sort of this idea of how bad the economy is for younger people, maybe for people that have been discriminated against through DEI initiatives, so white people, males, etc., how bad things are for younger people there and what possible solutions there are. So I think those are the two things I wanted to talk about. Hopefully tomorrow I can talk more about the James O'Keefe investigation that we saw, where you had members of the Pentagon that were admitting that they are in contact with former generals and people that used to work at the CIA, etc., and how to stymie Donald Trump. Apparently, the person who said that in the undercover investigation has been fired, which goes to show the importance of getting rid of these people. I'm sorry. The impetus should be, if there's any question of trust whatsoever, Trump should do anything legally to totally overhaul these employees, because it is clear that they sabotaged him his first 4 years. He deserves to have people in positions that aren't there to intentionally sabotage him, whether it be the intel agencies, the State Department, the military, etc. So, talk about some of that stuff tomorrow. Let's start with the California fire situation and something I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of focus on the budget. And I actually, missed you guys too, Megan Wolf. I'm going to steel man some of the Democrats in California for a second. And I mean what I'm going to say here as well. There was a lot of talk of the budget, of they cut the budget for the fire department in California, in places like LA. And I saw this all over the place. What was the $17 million? The budget was this fiscal year less than the previous fiscal year. Now, the first thing I want to say to steelman this is there any proof that that lack of budget, let's take it at face value, is there any proof that that had a significant effect on readiness for the ability to fight fires like the one we saw in the Palisades and in many other areas? Now, how would you begin to look at that? Well, the first thing I would do, obviously you want to look at, were there failures that occurred? But we'll put that to the side. The other way that I would start looking at that, anytime you're talking about budgets, is to say, well, what was the budget and what is the budget? For example, if I told you that I cut my grocery budget by $3,000 from last year to the year previous, what does that mean to you? Well, if my grocery budget's $80,000, $3,000 is not that substantial. But if my grocery budget's $15,000, then $3,000 is substantial. Now, maybe I think of things like that quicker than the average person, not because I'm smarter, but because I did policy debate in college. And oftentimes, the topic would include words like substantial. So 1 year, the topic was the United States federal government should substantially reduce subsidies in one of the following crops. That wasn't verbatim, but that was basically the topic. Well, what is the substantial reduction in corn subsidies? $1 million? Would that be substantial? Well, the first thing you would have to ask is, well, how much is the budget? Before we could determine whether a specific monetary amount is substantial. If the budget's $1 billion, then no, $1 million reduction doesn't seem substantial. Now, you could argue on what your version of substantial would be, but you get the idea. So when you look at the budget and it's like hundreds of millions of dollars approaching $1 billion, is $17 million a substantial reduction that would go from a successful fire department that's able to combat fires like this to an abysmal failure? If it's like less than 10% of the budget that was cut. Yeah, the budget was $837 million. And we're talking about a $17 million reduction. Not necessarily. Now, you could argue, but that reduction was in things that were specific to fighting a fire like this. Such as, that reduction came from upkeep in fire trucks. And so therefore there weren't as many fire trucks. Maybe. But the numbers being thrown out there, and it sounds like a big number to us, and it is a big number, but you just hear, oh shit, they cut their budget $17 million, and then something bad happened. That's why, and I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I don't think that that's reason enough. Then, I have to be honest, I saw other people say, okay, well, what is the budget? Let's look at specifically. And I saw people that were raising significant questions as to whether or not the budget was even cut. Because it seems what happened was there were certain things that were like ancillary budget items. So maybe the overall budget was $837 million, but there's also other ancillary auxiliary items that are put on, and maybe there was more money put there. And then maybe that budget cut looks substantial, but what if the 2023-24 year, was way higher than normal? Like, for example, let's say our fire department where I'm from, it's rural Pennsylvania. By the way, it's a volunteer fire department. That's how things work in my area of the world. It's volunteer. But let's say that there was a budget for our township for the fire department, and that budget's $100,000. So in 2021, $100,000. 2022, $100,000. Then in 2023, they decide we need 3 new fire trucks. So the budget becomes $1 million. So they buy all the trucks, and then the next year the budget's $500,000. And then a bad fire hits and someone says, well, you cut the fire department's budget in half. You cut it in half. Well, not really. Actually, it quintupled. Went up 500%. From a normal year, it just looks because we spent an exorbitant amount the year before, and we spent less this time, that looks like a significant cut. So there is talk of that the budget for the 2022-23 year was much higher. And in my limited research of it, I will say this to Steelman Gavin Newsom. From when he has become governor until now, the average amount given to the fire departments is much higher than when he began. So you might have years where it goes way up and then it comes down some, but on average it's higher. We'll talk, guess who farted, about some of the other issues. Now, all I'm saying here is I'm defending the idea, or I'm defending that just saying budget cut $17 million, therefore bad fires. So point the finger at the people that cut the budget. This is not a progressive mentality. And this is why I thought it was important that I talk about this. One of the significant problems that we have in this country is the insane size of our government. The truth is, the Democrats are this party of spend, 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 and the Republicans are the party of spend just slightly less. You're incorrect, basically, God's favorite aunt, on what a volunteer fire department means where I'm at. The volunteer fire departments may get their equipment paid and things like that, but they do not get a salary. They do not get paid. They are, by definition, volunteers. So they might get meals paid for at times if they're going to events, but they are not paid a paycheck. So, in that sense, it's not the same as the military. Anyways, off to that tangent. The problem is, money doesn't equal results. And the way Republicans and conservatives and MAGA people are falling into that default idea by focusing so much on this budget issue. Let's reverse the issue. If the budget would have included $17 million, hell, let's say the budget was $40 million higher. Everyone that has a problem with it, if you're in the chat right now, let's do this. If you think that Democrats and Gavin Newsom have mismanaged California and their fire preparedness, press 1. If you don't see evidence of that, or if you disagree with that statement, press 2. So if you think that Newsom and Democrats have mismanaged fire readiness, put a 1 in the chat. If you think that they haven't, or you haven't seen evidence of it, you're not sure, put a 2. And there might be people a little behind, but so far it's all 1s, which I would agree. I think that the Democrats have horribly mismanaged fire preparedness. So, to all of those people that put 1 and all of those people that agree with that, let me ask you a question. Do you think, had $17 million more been spent, then all of a sudden they would have been prepared? Do you think then, that would have solved it? $17 million, that's what they needed. Does anyone believe that thinks the Democrats have mismanaged? If they would have just spent $17 million more dollars. Mega Gunwolf says no. Gets afforded says any billions. Yeah, everyone's saying no. Right. I don't think that. If you don't think they mismanaged, you probably don't think, but $17 million more would have solved this fire issue. And if you do think they mismanaged, you probably don't think that it was only a slight mismanagement that $17 million would have fixed. The problem is, when it's so easy, and I understand it, it's easy to simplify, and in particular, a group of people, if you truly believe the Democrats have mismanaged, then it's easy to do things like say, but look, they spent less money. They cut the budget. Especially when you could say, and look where they are spending money. Oh, they're spending money on illegals, but they're cutting the budget for the fire department. And that does speak to priorities, which is something that absolutely I think is fair to criticize. Fire preparedness doesn't seem to be a high priority of Newsom and Democrats in California. But when you simplify, and the reason to simplify it is because it's easy to digest. If you're talking to someone, like, I'll be honest, I would say that my knowledge of fire management in general, let alone in California, maybe a 2.5 out of 10. As far as what I know compared to the average person. I don't know shit. Right? I don't. I know the little snippets that I'm reading, but I don't get necessarily the counter argument to that. I know that there seems to have been a problem for a long time. I know that I've read that, look, you're going to continue to see out of control fires in places like California because they do a bad job of forest management, because their priorities seem to be on more things like climate change and not wanting to disrupt habitats. And so they don't have reservoirs filled like they should, and they're not clearing underbrush. But I haven't had an expert that I've heard give the other side of that story. Now, my gut feeling is there's probably a lot of truth to that. But I have to be open to hearing the other side of the argument. What's up, Max? How you doing? But one of the things that's easy to sell to someone like me, who's maybe not the most knowledgeable, I don't live in California, I don't have any specific knowledge necessarily. Look, they spent less money. That's an easy sell. Cody Folsom, thanks for the super chat for $5. Says, glad to see you're back, Big Bob. Thank you. Glad to be back. So it's very simple to articulate that to someone. Wow, there's bad fires there. What's going on? One side yells climate change, and the other side's like, they're mismanaging it. And you're like, oh, okay, what's your evidence? Well, they cut their budget by $17 million. That's persuasive to a person who's just looking at the surface level. That's easy to understand. Oh, wow, $17 million. That's a lot. They cut their budget? But does that really solve the problem? I would assume the goal is to fix the situation. Now, fixing that situation might be getting these shit Democrats out of power. Or it might be the Democrats that are there that are going to win elections anyways because it's California, at least getting them to change their position so they're doing better at managing these sorts of things so that there's not a human cost to the level of these fires that we see. And if we're focused all of our energy on, well, 17 million, you know what Democrats are going to do? They'll say, yeah, spend more money. Okay. Problem solved. And that's it. Oh, okay. Then the next time there's a bad fire, and they say, but we raised the budget 30%. The budget went up $150 million. And you all said that was the problem, so we clearly care. Look. And then you'll have to say, well, actually, the problems were more systemic than just cutting a measly $17 million. Taylor, can't make it rain, true. But as far as things like the underpreparedness of dealing with the underbrush growth, of filling the reservoirs, my understanding is the past 2 years in California have been remarkably wet. So these weren't drought conditions. So when you could see reservoirs that are unfilled, now it doesn't mean had that reservoir been filled that there wouldn't have been significant damage from fires. It is absolutely true that natural disasters will occur. You could be the most prepared fire force in the world, and a freak lightning strike on a dry month is going to cause a fire. Yes or no, Taylor M? Have the past two... So Taylor M saying, I made a claim that the past 2 years have been remarkably wet for California. They didn't seem like drought conditions. Taylor M makes a different claim, that currently there are drought conditions. So Taylor, I'll give you a chance to backtrack your claim here. If you refuse to backtrack your claim, then we'll go look up the evidence and see what the case is. I'm claiming that my understanding was the past 2 years have been pretty wet as far as the average in California goes. And so any excuse that there wasn't an ability to fill up reservoirs, it's not like we had sustained droughts that made that incapable. You're saying, no, currently we're in a drought condition. Both of those things could be true. That wouldn't be an excuse for there currently being a drought for the reservoirs to not be filled. So the problem I'm having is, I believe that the gut feeling of just saying, well, how much money did they spend? Is falling into this trap that Democrats are more than happy to have you fall into. Democrats are remarkably successful at crafting the narrative of, if we spend money on something, we care about it. And we should spend more money on it. They get to have their cake and eat it too. And part of it's for good reason, because Republicans suck and spend shitloads of money too. So for example, anything in life you could see. There are pros and cons to anything. That doesn't mean that there's no objectively better answers. I'll tell you a story. Like, this is how policy debate worked in college. Policy debate, you had to have an offensive argument against your opponent. It wasn't enough just to have defense. So if I stood up, my plan was reduce corn subsidies by 20% because that will cause farmers in the United States that grow corn to switch to sorghum, which will be a boon for the United States economy. And that will make us more competitive against China, which will avert a war. That's my argument. And you saying, nah, I don't think it'll do that. You know who's going to win that debate 99 out of 100 times? Me. Because the judge is going to say, well, maybe not. Maybe it won't do that. But why not take the risk? There's no downside. You would have to have an offensive reason. You would say, no, reducing corn subsidies would be bad because it'll lead people starving. Now the judge is weighing my offense versus your offense. The defensive positions are important, but you have to have an offensive argument. And it was difficult for people to understand that I was coaching in debate because a lot of them came from sort of a public style debate format, more akin to what you would see online here, like what you see me do online. In a public debate format, here was a public debate that I took part in once. Should the university I was attending, Clarion University, have a drunk bus? There were other universities, state universities around here that had drunk buses. What it was a bus that you could call, no questions asked, they would pick you up, and they would take you within the town limits. So you're underage, you're 17 years old, you're 18 years old, you're drunk. You have two options, get behind the wheel of your car or call this bus that will pick you up free of charge, take you to your location. The idea was it would lower DUIs, it would lower risky drinking behavior, etc. That was the idea. Now there's pros and cons to this, but the problem was in the public debate, one side was like, yeah, we should do this, it'll lower DUIs, and the other side's like, nah, it won't. And in a public format, that's okay. People in the audience could be like, yeah, I don't think it'll really work, so no. But that's because there are implicit things that you're adding into that. If the cost was free, like if Elon Musk came to your town and was like, here's the deal, I'll pay for this. It'll cost you nothing. Nothing at all. I'll do all the upkeep. And if you say no, I'm not going to give you the money anyways. It's just a one-time offer. And you made the argument, I don't think it'll really work. That probably wouldn't be persuasive because he'd be like, well, why not take the chance? No one's paying for it except Elon Musk. Who gives a shit? But you implicitly, without that, you're like, well, if I don't think it'll work, it would cost money. It'll be a big hassle. No. But in policy debate in college, you had to say that. If you don't make the argument, it basically doesn't exist. The judge is just evaluating on what they see being said in the debate. Oh, Gavin Newsom's a Bloodhound Gang fan? Why is everybody always picking on me? That's good. I know me some Bloodhound Gang, and not just their most popular. So I was a big fan when I was younger. But the problem is, Democrats get away with this all the time because they're like, well, we spend a lot of money. And they'll do this all the time. Anything. Well, shouldn't we spend more money on that? You don't care about insert, whatever it is. You don't care about childhood diabetes? Oh, federal government should be spending more money on that. You don't care about dogs roaming the street that don't have care and shelter? Oh, you monster. Money for that. But there's a downside to massive spending. The problem is, that's never put at the feet of the people that want to massively spend. So, for example, inflation. That's more nebulous. It's harder to draw a direct line from, because everything's piecemeal. So you just say, well, we wanted to spend another $20 million on fire readiness. And then a bad fire happens and you say, see, should have spent the $20 million. And you're like, yeah, but that's not what the argument is. The argument's not just $20 million on fire readiness. It's 20 million here. It's 20 million for illegals. It's 20 million for feminism classes in Afghanistan. It's 20 million here. It's how many billion for Ukraine? It's this. And then all of a sudden you look at our deficit and it's out of control. But you're always able to say, but this one thing's important. This one thing. You're saying that's not, you don't think fire readiness is important? And the problem is, we allow our politicians, it's not just Democrats, Republicans do this as well, but it's overwhelmingly the Democrats that are for more spending. We allow them to say, we care about the issues, which is why we want to spend on them. And you don't. But they don't get the downside of, well, look at the crazy deficit spending. Look at inflation. Well, what can you do about it? The problem's not just throwing money. The problem is that you need competent people that are good people, morally good, that are working on solving problems. Let me give you an example. Hey, Taylor M., why do inner city schools struggle so much? I say to Taylor because I think they're Democrat. But go ahead, ask a Democrat that you know. Why do inner city schools struggle? Public schools in the inner city. What can we do? How can we make these inner city schools better? Culture is a big reason. Inevitably, what you'll get is someone will say, well, they don't spend enough money. They're not privileged. They don't have money like these other schools. That's what they'll say. We're just not spending, their textbooks are bad. They don't have access. Nope, they just don't have the money. That's the problem. Now, it is true. The private schools have more money being spent per student. But when it comes to tax dollars, it actually turns out inner city schools per student are getting more money on average than schools like where I grew up in rural schools. But what we're always told is, you know what the problem is? We need to spend more money. And we do. We spend more money. And then the problem stays stagnant or it gets worse. And so then the answer is, oh, the problem's getting worse. Now what? And they're like, you know what we need to do? Spend more money. That's the problem. Then you never get to the actual issues. Because it's just, well, we just throw more money at the problem. Well, what's the money do? Even with higher education in the United States, it seems like degrees are worth less and less. Many, depending on your major and university you're going to, many people are graduating with college degrees that would have had struggle passing competency tests on these subjects from high school years ago. But how can that be? The cost of your education's increased tenfold over what it was like in the 70s. Far outpaced inflation. Now the universities are making way more money. So why isn't the quality of the education increased? Where'd that money go? Did it go to hire better professors? Did it go to hire more professors? Did it go to get better technology? Most of it went to administrators. DEI. In my small school, state school, Clarion University I went to, there are DEI professionals at that school whose job is make the black students comfortable, increase diversity. They have trouble getting people to attend this university. They've combined it with other state universities. It used to be called Clarion. Now it's called Penn West. It's combined with other state universities. Yeah, Taylor M., homelessness, another great situation. California spends way more money on homeless problem than most other states. Now, you might say, well, that's because they had more homeless. But does throwing money at the problem help it or hurt it? Seems to make the situation worse. Now, I think in my very unprofessional opinion, that it's very much like when you see these studies on happiness. Does money make you happy? And the truth is, yes and no. Yes, you need to have a bare minimum of money. For example, if you can't afford to rent an apartment, you're probably on average going to be less happy than the person who can. If you're homeless, because if you're starving to death. But most studies seem to suggest once you get to where you're making money enough that you're not worried about bills, you're not fighting with your spouse about struggling to make ends meet to pay the electric bill or the car payment, and you're at that level where it's like, yeah, we don't worry about that anymore. It seems then, I don't know what that number is now, 120,000, 100,000, maybe even less than that. I don't know. It seems like above and beyond that, the more money people get, they become more miserable. On average, that's not that every rich person's miserable. In other words, there becomes a certain level where it's like just throwing more money doesn't solve the problem you're trying to solve. And I think that that's probably true. Yeah, if you have a fire department that only spends $5,000, that department's going to be shit. But if you have a fire department that's budgets $800 million, does necessarily raising it $15 million make it all of a sudden more equipped to fight fires? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe just throwing money at the problem's not the issue. Maybe there's more systemic problems with the people that are running the situation and the way that they're using the money. Maybe using the money is going to prioritize DEI initiatives. Maybe it's not being prioritized on land management or preparation. And so I see this problem when we're talking about, yes, you have people that are talking. Now listen, I'm admitting that I am ill read up on the situation. I've been very sick, very busy the past couple weeks. But I remember these conversations, when was it, 2021? There was California fires. And I remember looking into it some then, and there were a lot of forest professionals that were saying, listen, they're not properly dealing with the undergrowth in these forests. They won't deal with it. And as such, these sorts of things are going to be predictable. And there's other things that make fires more likely. Homelessness. How many of these fires were started by drug addicts on the street? That doesn't mean there wouldn't be fires without that problem, but it could exacerbate the situation, particularly if you're talking about fires getting into a city area. Now, again, I want to make it clear, there is nothing that you could ever do, even if you spent 90% of your budget on fire management, that would ever prevent any sort of fire. Let me rephrase that. It would prevent every fire. It could significantly limit them and the damage they would do. Kick non-stanza, would you like to call in? Will noted anti-interventionist Rob call out Trump for threatening to invade our allies like Greenland? Can you show me where he threatened to invade Greenland? Can you show me that? Will he admit to being a massive hypocrite? Geez, I did a show on it last week when I talked about this stuff. Will noted nobody kick Nastanza admit to being a fucking uninformed sack of shit that tries to call me a hypocrite without knowing shit about what I said? Will he admit to that? Will he call in? Or will he be a coward, as his anonymous name suggests? So that's... Yeah, Lord of Slice. Did I call it fake news? Is that what I said? Can you point to me the timestamp of that? Anyways, that's sort of the point where we're at, where it's spending, 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 spending good. We spend more money. And I think that there needs to be a bigger conversation about why you specifically think it was mismanagement other than just, well, they spent $17 million less dollars. Yeah, that's right, Stabby McStabwood. Trump basically said, I won't rule out forms of economic or military coercion. That would be stupid to rule out tactics. I know you said no one cared about Springfield, Ohio before Trump lied about it. How did Trump lie about it? Quote me saying that. Quote me saying no one cared about Springfield, Ohio before Trump lied about it. Can you quote me saying that? So let me get this straight. Let's steelman your position. If I said no one cared about Springfield, Ohio until Trump brought attention to it, it now makes me a hypocrite to talk about caring about California and fires because I said people didn't care about Springfield, Ohio. That's your argument? So if I said, for example, no one cared about my neighbor's house got broken into until it became a national story, and then another neighbor gets their house broken into, and I said, oh, my poor neighbor, he got his house broken into, you'd say, Rob's a hypocrite. Why? Because I correctly pointed out that people didn't care about this first story? How do you understand what the word hypocrite means? So the idea that just throwing money at the problem, I think that Republicans move into that. Yeah, I'm done working with the guy. He can call in if he wants. Otherwise, I'm not responding to him anymore. Now this topic of money brings me to the second topic that I wanted to talk about, and it has to do with this Chris Rufo's comments, and it goes back to sort of this H-1B. And this is where I said I wanted to be positive today. It's a very touchy subject. Now, I'm 40 years old. I'm not knowing exactly what that makes me. I'm not a baby boomer. The people, maybe you could say you're a boomer because I don't know technology. Am I a millennial? I don't know. The label doesn't matter. But in some senses, I'm old, and in some senses, I'm not as old. For example, let's say I would win, I'd run for Congress again and win. 40's pretty young for a politician. But as just a dude, 40's pretty old. It's getting up there. I think, look at these gray hairs. You know? So it's weird in life how certain things, if I'm in a Call of Duty lobby, I'm probably old because most of the people are probably younger. If I'm in Washington as a congressperson, I'm young, but I'm the same age. Yeah, millennials. I'm 1984. It's my birthday. So it's always strange to me when I feel old about certain things. And this Chris Rufo story is making me feel old. The gist of the story is this. I guess it's not controversy, drama, whatever you want to call it. It starts with sort of the H-1B talk and the idea that there are groups of people in this country that have been disenfranchised, such as young people, males, white people, etc., because certain industries, particularly one like the tech industry, have prioritized DEI and basically hiring people based on race, gender, etc. to fill out some sort of quota or some sort of virtue signal, which meant that these people that were sold a bill of goods by saying, go to college, get these degrees, you'll be able to get these jobs, ended up not getting them or getting replaced or basically being thrown to the side. And in general, even without the DEI portion of that, a lot of young people are sold this bill of goods, go to college, get a degree, and it'll all but guarantee you a really good job. Which, shit, that's not even the case for me, and I'm 40. But I was sold that bill of goods. Go to college, you gotta go to college, get a degree. The job I have I have a master's degree in speech communication. The job I have right now I could have with a GED. Let alone a freaking undergraduate or a graduate degree. But now it's just, you gotta go to college. That's what I was told. And so a lot of young people went to college and they're finding out a degree isn't the same as it was in 1970, where it made you stand out from the pack. Now it's just the norm. So you go and it costs way more than it would have cost in the 70s. So now you go into debt to get this piece of paper that basically doesn't separate you from anyone. And then many times, depending on what your degree was, it doesn't really qualify you for anything. And so they felt like, well, we're holding the bag. And then Trump wins. And he's against DEI. He's sort of more for meritocracy. He's America first, right? And so then all of a sudden you have people that Trump surrounded himself with, like Vivek and Elon Musk. And they're like, well, we got to bring in foreign workers with high specialization in areas like tech. And you're some dude with a tech degree. You're 22 years old, 23. And you're like, dude, I can't find a job. Right? And instead you're going to import people from India. You're going to import people from Europe. What about me? Now, I'm not saying I agree 100% with that, but I'm saying that's, in general, the theme that's going on with the H-1B thing. And Chris Rufo comes out and he's like, hey, and this is the skimming the surface. But Chris Rufo, for those who don't know, he's done a tremendous job in fighting back against things like DEI in schools, critical race theory, trans ideology in schools. He's been on the forefront of this. He comes out and he's like, listen, there's a lot of jobs that are paying pretty decent salaries, entry level, that are options. He brings up Panda Express. And I think maybe UPS. It's like you can make over $100,000 a year. Being a manager or an assistant manager, something like that, Chipotle, Panda Express, etc. And there's this huge blowback against Chris Rufo for saying this. Now let me try to steelman the blowback. First, many of these jobs as advertised, it's not really the way it is. For example, even though there could be particular areas where you can make $120,000 as a UPS driver, that's probably not the norm. So it's not like you could be like, well, shit, I have a degree in coding and it's just not working out for me. I'll just become a UPS driver and make $120,000 a year. Probably not that simple. Maybe where you live, that would be an option, but probably not where you live. It's not going to be that. You might be making $70,000. Also, a lot of those times, those numbers of your salary includes benefits, and sometimes those are grossly inflated. So they might include, $40,000 for health care. And so it's like, so then actually you're making $80,000 a year instead of whatever. So that's number one. It's oftentimes not as advertised. Number two, it's sort of demeaning in the sense that it's almost like you're telling these people that have valid concerns, hey, suck it up, man, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And even if that's a positive message, it could come across as very flippant, particularly if it's coming from people that are doing pretty good in a career they like right now. So if I'm making Rush Limbaugh money and I come on here and I tell you like, hey, I quit my job, I'll just stream and I'm making, $200,000 a month or something. And I'm like, why don't you go out there and dig some ditches? You might be like, yeah, kiss my ass, man. Easy for you to say there, tubbo, sitting on your fat ass, on a chair every day. easy for you to say. And that's true. I can understand that sounds of arrogance and flippancy. That I understand. And it also seemingly overlooks the problem that these people are identifying, which is the system screwed us over. The system's prioritized things like DEI, it's prioritizing hiring foreign people. Our education system has failed us. And when you're like, well, it's cool, just go work at Chipotle, it seems that you're belittling the concerns of these people. And so I think that's where much of the pushback comes. It's very similar to what I saw as the pushback from Vivek's comments about H-1B, where he said that there's a problem with the American education system and culture. He's right. He's wrong on the specifics. A lot of the specifics he talked about, like we prioritize the jock instead of the nerd. No, actually the exact opposite. Certainly that could be true in certain areas. But in general, we don't prioritize the jock. We don't celebrate them. We're not celebrating. The problem with our education system isn't that the strongest athletes are getting the biggest trophies. It's that we have prioritized victimization. And so whether that be physical ability, educational ability, exceptionalism and meritocracy has been on the down low. And the other thing where Vivek's message falls short is it makes it sound like the highest goal to aspire to in life is, can I make the most widgets? Who's the most productive at making widgets? As opposed to like having a family, having children, getting married to someone that you really love, having a relationship with God. Yes, of course, you need a level of productivity and a level of financial freedom along with those things. But the way Vivek talked about it, it's just like, well, if bringing in this person increases the GDP 0.0000001%, then we prioritize it over the American kid. And so I get the pushback. But the gist of what Vivek's saying is true. And most conservatives know it. Are you happy with our education system? K through 12 in this country? Are you happy with secondary ed in this country? No. They'll talk about problems with it all the time. Are you happy with a lot of the cultural issues in this country? No. But the problem was the way and the tone in which Vivek said it. I don't see that with Christopher Rufo here. And so I'm going to say some shit here that might make people mad, but I hope that I'm coming from it from a positive perspective. When I see people that are overly blackpilled, we've been screwed over as white people. We've been screwed over as men. No one gives a shit about our issues. They don't give a shit. They'll hire anyone above us in any of these tech firms, whatever, because it looks good for them for DEI, for virtue signaling, whatever. And even if it's a problem that's solved 15, 20 years from now, I'm screwed. My generation got screwed. I think those concerns are valid. But I don't know that just throwing up your hands and saying nothing's to be done, or I'll wait for the government to solve this, is necessarily the best way to go about it. Similarly, when I debate the white nationalists, they have valid concerns. They point out valid problems. The solutions where I disagree with them, look how white people are denigrated in culture, in academia. Yeah, right? You're right. Therefore, a country only for white people. No. That's not how I see it. The problem is, life's shit, and it's more shit for other people, and it's not fair. But how can we, what is our role? What can we do in that? It's like you're in a video game, right? You know, I think I've never played Dungeons and Dragons as far as the pen and paper, But like you play a D&D game where you roll for your character. What if you roll shitty stats? Well, you're still in the game. Are you just going to sit around and say, well, I rolled shitty stats. That's it. This sucks. Or do you say, okay, what can I do? I maybe have a unique perspective because my job is working with people that most of them have been born with a really shitty lot in life. That through no fault of their own, they were born with severe mental disabilities. And most, I don't want to say most, probably most though, if I'm being honest, people that are in that situation, like over the age of 50, they probably didn't have a lot of resources when they were kids. And many of them don't even have strong family connections because people didn't know what to do. You put them in a facility. And it would be easy for those people to just say, well, life screwed me over. It's not fair. And it's not. It is objectively not fair. Some of these people are the most morally righteous, loving, nicest, kindest people I've ever met. I'm a piece of shit. Why did I deserve to not be dealt that shitty hand biologically? What is it about me that makes me more deserving? Nothing. Why did I deserve to meet a woman who's fantastic and have a son that's amazing, who's been relatively healthy, all three of us? Why do I deserve that? As opposed to someone else that gets married to the love of their life and then they have a brain tumor and they die. None of that shit's fair. It's not. I have understood my entire life, since I've been probably 15, 16, I've understood that I am one of the luckiest people that have ever lived. Period. I say that with no hyperbole. I have a family that cared about me. I was relatively healthy. I had asthma, blood sugar problems. Big fat guy. But a lot of that's my fault. But pretty decent. I'm relatively intelligent. We all have different levels of, there's no rhyme or reason to it. What's fair, what's not. You could be born, let's say Elon Musk has a son that, or the richest man in the world has a son. And that son is the genetics of like LeBron James, just physical, insane, gifted athlete. Born with everything they'll ever need, insane wealth. And you're like, wow, look how lucky that person is. And he turns 18 and marries the love of his life. And by the time he's 23, they have kids. And then one day, he's off at the NBA, which he doesn't need to do. He just does because he loves. And he's a celebrity and everyone loves him. And his wife and kids get hit by a car and die. How is that guy luckier than you? Who doesn't have that financial resources? Who doesn't have the genetic gifts? What's even the sense of trying to figure this shit out? It's what can you control? You could control what your attitude is. I may die tomorrow. I may get in my car and have a stroke and die, or get hit by a car. I might. But what can I do with that information? Yes, there are things you could do that try to put yourself in better positions. You're less likely to die of a medical emergency if you're taking care of yourself. If you're not a drug abuser, if you're eating healthy, if you're exercising. Yeah, if you're driving safe. True, all of that's true. But the point is, so often in life, and I do this myself, I'll say, oh man, the grass is greener. I wish I had that. I wish I just had some more money. I wish I just had that person's job. I wish I had that person's house. I wish I had that person's audience. But you don't know. Maybe things are pretty good for you. comparatively. You don't know what that person with that nice house is dealing with behind the scenes. I'd rather have a little rinky-dink house and a loving wife and son than a big house on the cusp of divorce. That's how I look at it. So what am I saying with all of this? If your attitude is, DEI exists, yeah. Our education system sucks, yeah. White people and men have been shit upon by institutions, yeah. I'm in the tech field and I'm being shit on, probably. So what are you going to do about it? And if someone comes along and says, hey, here's some shit you could do it's not glamorous, but it's a reasonable paycheck, and you're like, fuck you. Is that the best attitude to have? I don't know. I get it. I do. I was a pretty good debater, right? I went to pretty much the cheapest school you could go to in Clarion, or in Pennsylvania. Clarion University, state school, super rural. I worked at Burger King and at Goodwill to help pay my... I also took out big student debt, don't get me wrong. But that's what I did. I worked. I also had a work-study job working in the debate office. My first job I had was delivering newspapers when I was like 12, 13. I then transitioned to, I think I was 15, when I got papers to be able to work. I worked at a Christmas tree farm with some Puerto Ricans and some other people, many of which were being paid under the table. I made $6 an hour trimming Christmas trees. Sometimes cutting them and dragging them. Sometimes trimming them with machetes, trimming them with shears. You'd get what we called long handles to the tall trees, to the tops of them. Sucked. It's tough work. Physical work. Walking miles and miles and miles. $6 an hour. Worked at Burger King. I've worked at Goodwill, like I said. Bartended. Trying to think what other shit jobs I've had. And then the work I do now, I've done at my current company about 13 years, but I worked at a company previous to that as well. Oh, and I was an assistant debate coach. And my current job, I'll just give you a brief rundown. Any job where you do healthcare will involve working with bodily fluids. This is difficult to talk about. My first day on the job, it was not a good company that I worked for. I'll suffice it to say that. But I was put into a home where I started at 11 o'clock at night. It's my first day on the job, home health care with a person with disabilities. When I walk into the home, the person that I'll be taking care of is sleeping. I'm supposed to be the second, so there's supposed to be another person there. That person had been stranded there for about 2 weeks. They were like, I got to go home. Person will probably sleep all night. I'm going to go home for about 12 hours. I'll see you in 12 hours. Person that I'm supposed to take care of wakes up 2 hours into the shift. The most physically strong person I've ever met. Not very verbal. I wasn't told much. This is not the norm, though. This wasn't a great company. After about an hour of nothing going on, there was an incredible amount of property destruction and violence that occurred in the house, which ended in what they call a fecal smear. A fecal smear is when someone will intentionally defecate and then rub it on themselves and on their property. So here I am, 3 hours into a job that I took because I was the assistant debate coach at a state university. The state budget did not pass. I believe this was 2008 here in Pennsylvania. I had bills to pay. I opened up the newspaper, found the first job I could, put my name in for it. They called me back. After about 2 weeks of training, I find myself in this position. the job is not for everyone. If you're squeamish about bodily fluids, it might be not just, you know, feces or urine, but it could be blood. A lot of times you see that in this line of work and other things. It's not pleasant, that sort of stuff. And a lot of people, that's just a no-go. For me, out of necessity, I stuck with the job and I grew to sort of love the work because I found that I had a connection with people that were in that sort of unique situation. So I ended up, to me, that stuff doesn't bother me that much because I've just recognized it as part of the job, and it's, you know, most of the time it's out of the control of the person that you're working with, and they're going through a difficult time, and so you try to treat people with dignity. But I'm not saying, oh, that's what you should do to get ahead in life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that while all this was going on, I was one of the better, and I was, by the way, when I got hired at that job, you know what my pay rate was? $11.25 an hour is what I made to start with. I think after 3 months that bumped up to $12 or $12.50 an hour. But when I was basically made house supervisor there, I was making, I think, $12.50 an hour is what I ended that company making. Now I make about $20 an hour. Anyways, here's the point. When I would go do debate stuff, I would have people look at me like shocked to find out what I was doing for a career because I was really good at debate. Really good. And, you know, I had people at prestigious universities like, what the hell are you doing? 2008, that was. Like, what are you doing? Go move to the city. Go coach debate at a university. You make $40,000 a year just as an assistant coach anywhere. You get hired, no problem. And eventually, you know, once I got my grad degree, I could become a professor, etc. It's weird. It's weird living in those two worlds simultaneously. On this one world, it's all these wealthy people. In the academic world, they're like, yeah, you're good, you could do this. And then on the other, it's like, I'm working, the people that were my coworkers, I'll be honest with you, many of them were people that didn't have degrees. They didn't, you know, they probably were working this job because they got fired at a bunch of other jobs. So I have understood my entire life, even when I was in college, you know, and I'm debating Harvard or I'm debating, you know, some big university who the kid I'm debating full scholarship to a prestigious university. And I'm, you know, I'm going to get home and sleep. And then I got a shift at Burger King the next day. It's a weird feeling, but I never gave a shit. For me, it was always, I didn't denigrate people that were actually out there trying to work. To me, it's like, I don't give a shit. If you're 50 years old and you get fired and I see you working at drive-thru at Burger King, I don't look at you like, oh man, what a sack of shit. I'm like, hey, that guy's getting out there or that woman's getting out there. They're working. It sucks. I get that. You go to university, you think you're going to get a badass job in the tech field. You see that you feel that you've been screwed over at your university. You're screwed over putting no one gives a shit about prioritizing you as a hire, no matter what your education level is, because you don't meet the right demographic boxes. I get it. That shit sucks. But I don't know that necessarily the person that says, here are some other options for you, while I agree with you, all that shit sucks and it all needs fixed. I don't know that that's the right attitude to have about it, because then what's the consequence? So you're just going to be like, no, fuck all that. I'll never do any of that. Okay. And then what? You're going to wait for Trump to solve DEI? That's your plan? Good luck. Maybe. I think that this is a problem that's generations in the making, and it's going to take generations to fix. And it's not fair if you're caught up in the middle of that. It's not. Just like it's not fair if you were caught up in the generation of black Americans that dealt with slavery. It's not. But how do you approach it? Yes, you fight the injustices that you see, but in the meanwhile, do you just say, well, I guess I'll do nothing? So I do think that there's a fine line that you kinds of comes across as flippant when someone like me would say, like, no one's saying you have to work at Chipotle. No one's saying you have to work at Panda Express. You might think that that job's beneath you. That's fine. I don't think it's beneath me. But that's fine. Teach their own. But I don't know that Chris Rufo was trying to be like, I mean, a guy who's literally got famous going into school after school after school, showing the bullshit they're teaching about critical race theory and all the DEI stuff. I don't know that he's, never really gave a shit? And he really just said, yeah, we just want white men to work at Panda Express. I don't think that's where he was coming from. The other thing, and hopefully this is a more positive spin, I hear people say, well, but that money's not the same in inflation and, all of these other situations. You can't have the family life that you used to have in the 70s. Communities aren't a thing anymore. Now everything's just isolated and culture sucks. And I'm here to tell you that I think you're wrong. I have no doubt that that's true in many, 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 many areas. Maybe even most areas. But come to rural America. It's not perfect. But I live in that area. I have a shared driveway with a wonderful neighbor and their family that would do anything to look out for us. I was talking to someone one day, and they were talking about how in Europe, it's crazy. Did you know this in Europe? There'll be certain places in little quaint towns and European villages where there'll be farmers that set crops out, and they just put a little bucket there that you could pay. There's no one running the stall. We have that 4 minutes up the road here. 4 minutes up the road. Zoc rolls. There it is. They got a nice little shed that they've built. They sell straw hats and a couple little toy things for kids. And they got canned food. And I don't mean canned like that you buy at the supermarket. I mean like they are canning peppers and vegetables from their farm. And you could buy produce. And they have prices listed. And they got a little tablet. And you write down, I bought 6 ears of corn and one straw hat. Placed in $30. They got a little change drawer where you can make your own change. That's right. If you put a note in saying you were short, no one would give a shit. Everybody around here sells firewood. Same system. $25 for a stack. There's a box. Just throw it in. And yeah, I'm sure that there's a-holes that take advantage here and there. But in general, life's not so easy to just pick up and move. But those places do exist. What do you prioritize in life? I have friends, so the nearest big city around here is Pittsburgh. It's about an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes away. So I have friends that grew up near me, and they moved to Pittsburgh. And some of them, their decision is, I don't like the fact there's nothing to do. And that's kind of true. What's there to do around here? You're not going to go to a concert. You're either going to go to the bar Or, I don't know. So yeah, a lot of people would come in. That's what I did. I was a fucking alcoholic. Now I have a kid. I don't give a shit that there's nothing to do. I like that there's nothing to do. I like the fact that I have a community where I know my kid's going to go to school and it's not like a gladiator arena. And we're going to send him to this Catholic school and he's going to have a class size of about 6. And we're going to know every single one of those kids and their families. And we're going to know the 2 or 3 teachers that he has. One of them's a family member. I like the fact that when you're out grocery shopping, even if it is a place like Walmart, you know 40 to 50% of the people you see in the aisles. I like hanging out at my parents' and my in-laws and just shooting the shit out with the fire going, maybe having a beer or 2. That's fun to me. That's what I like doing. I used to like getting blackout fucking drunk. And I have nothing against people that do that. And if you're the type of person that wants to live in the city because you like city life, I have nothing against that. I have friends that do that. That's fine. But for those that say, what I want is this sort of community, there are areas where it exists. And it might be tough to uproot your life. I get that. But like, my house, like, I don't even know how much I should say about this. The house that I'm in right now is 3 to 4 bedroom, depending on how you look at it. Now, this was a bedroom. That's now my office. My bedroom's downstairs. Me and my wife's, my son's bedroom's downstairs. We have a guest bedroom, and then upstairs, and this used to be a bedroom. It's 1.5 bath. I think we own maybe 1/4 of an acre, maybe half an acre. It's not hard to find my address, believe it or not. I'm not going to announce it here, but this house was, all told, we bought 5 years ago, $85,000. That's around the normal range of a house around here. $100,000 is I mean, at this point with inflation, that's normal. And I'm sure shit's got way crazier the past 3 years. So I was fortunate enough to buy my house 5 years ago. But $150,000 gets you a freaking gorgeous semi-mansion here. Before I lived here, I lived above a restaurant and a bar called the Washington House. 1-bedroom apartment, me and my wife, with utilities. We paid internet, that was it. So gas paid for, electric paid for, $400 a month. That's what I paid to rent. $400 a month. Only bill I had was internet. And this is one of the things people don't understand. When people talk about like, well, mandatory minimum wage, and I would, if you followed me back then when I was streaming, I would be like, but I know people that own small businesses here. Like, it's out of business now, but there used to be this mom and pop little grocery store, and they were paying people like $8 an hour to work there. Now that sounds crazy. If you're living in Pittsburgh and you're paying $1,600 for a 1-bedroom apartment, and you're making $8 an hour, that ain't getting you nowhere. But if you're paying $400, and you're bringing in $1,000 a month, and your bills, your expenses are only $600 a month, and you got $400 a month. Would you rather make more than $8 an hour? Yes. But that's why if you force the minimum wage to be $15, that place is out of business like that. They're going to be like, we can't pay that. We can't do that. Now, Dollar General across the street, it could pay $15 an hour because it's a national corporation. But the mom and pop couldn't. And I had argued with these people, and they'd say, well, then they shouldn't be in business. And I was like, but what you don't understand is having the same minimum wage in an area where I live, where rent's $400 a month, as opposed to Seattle, where it's $2,000 a month, is kind of crazy. It's a different situation. So it's different, you know, lifestyles for different people. I get that. And again, a lot of people, they would spend a week here and be like, who could live here? This is boring as shit. I like boring. I like living in an area where I could get in my car and drive an hour and a half, an hour, 45 minutes. And if I want to go to a concert, I could do that. It's not the end of the world. So anyways, I don't give a lot of life advice, but when I'm saying if you feel disenfranchised, if you're bummed out because you've been, and I don't know, but here's another thing. Let me say this, and this is going to piss off a lot of people in that crowd as well, but I think that it's worth saying. Sometimes I think, and I include myself in this, we don't do the best job of being honest with where some of the challenges in our life come from. I work at a minimum, I work half the hours of a week because I work at a home where someone has to physically be on the site 24/7. Now, I'm not always clocked in while I'm there, but I have to be there. That means at a minimum, there's 168 hours in a week? So at a minimum, I am on the premise, unless I take vacation or something, 84 hours. Period. Then, many times, I have trainings, I have meetings that I have to go to in the office, which is an hour away. That's a lot of hours at work. $20 an hour isn't a lot of money, but when you're working that many hours, it can add up. I'm not saying that's the right way or that's preferable. I think that sucks. I wish I worked less hours. It wasn't a big deal until I had my son Hank. But now I want to spend time with my family more. Now, not to say that before I had my son, I didn't want to spend time with my wife, but I think it was sort of healthy to spend time away from each other and have our own interests and stuff. To some degree. It's still, I wasn't working this many hours then either. So that's at minimum that I work that. Why? Is it because the system fucked me over? Maybe. I think objectively I was the best debater to come out of Clarion University. There's one other person that's in the running for that came after me. Almost to a T, I could point to all these people that I was better than, and they are financially destroying me. Lawyers, executives at tech firms. They're living in cities, they got beautiful homes, beautiful cars, making easily clearing 6 figures a year. One of them maybe even more than that. Why? I was better than them. That's not fair. Life fucked me over. It's not fair. That's bullshit. Because I didn't know the right people? Because I had a big heart and I worked with people with disabilities, so I get punished? That's bullshit. Because the system's bullshit. Right? It screws over people like me. I'm a guy. No one gave a shit. I'm a white guy. No one gave a shit. You want to know what the truth is? Because I was a fucking drunk. That's why. They were getting really good grades and going to class. And they were good at debate while doing stuff that would ensure that they had a career in the future. You know what I was doing? I was studying debate. I was doing good at debate. And I was drinking my fucking head off. That's what I was doing. That's the truth. That more than anything. Is it true that some other things could have residual effects? Yeah, but I don't even have control over that shit. The main thing was I made shitty decisions. That's it. I could tell you about challenges that came up in my life and excuses, and a lot of them would be rooted in truth. But the main problem, if I'm honest, was I fucked around. That's what it was. That's the truth. And I remember what really hit me. Like I say, these were life lessons I learned. Debate, the two most important lessons that I learned from debate was this. My third full year in debate, I had this partner who ended up being the last partner I had. And we were pretty good. And to qualify for the national debate tournament was our goal. It's very prestigious, very hard to do. And there's several avenues that you could qualify. You could get an outstanding bid, basically. And to do that, you have to basically be one of the top 16 teams in the country. We weren't going to do that. So then our avenue was to qualify at your district tournament. So it's basically one tournament, and you have to be the top, 20% of teams at that tournament. It's going to be a challenge. There were good teams in our tournament, in our district. And so we did everything right. We practiced real hard. We knew that we didn't necessarily have the IQ of the people we'd be debating. So we were going to have to outwork them. And we both worked really hard. And we had one of the most batshit insane coaches who basically put his life on hold to give every waking minute to helping us out. And we did it right. And so we went and we won. Only we didn't. We went and we lost. And it sucked. And I remember it was DC area. Mary Washington University was the tournament. So I don't know what it was, 10-hour drive home. And at first you're talking and whatever, and it's a bummer and whatever. But then after a while, people are falling asleep. And I'm sitting there awake. And I remember thinking, and it was one of the greatest lessons I learned in life. It's like, I'm not the main character. Life's not a comic book. It's not a fucking video game. It's not a movie. Sometimes you're Rocky and you punch the meat and you chase the chicken and you run up the stairs in Philadelphia. And you know what happens? You still get your ass kicked. Yeah, you're probably right, Truzella. I need to start titling my videos differently. Sometimes that happens. And it was a tough lesson to learn, but it's like, yeah, the good guys don't always win. Turns out those other people, they were trying real hard too. They all had, excuse me, they all have stories too. And so that was a good lesson. Then when I started coaching debate, so then the next year we went, and it was kind of crazy, not to get too much into it, but we had to qualify at that same tournament. It was my last year, my partner's last year. The tournament before that tournament, me and my partner got in a huge fight. We did terrible at that tournament. We were favored to be one of the better teams at that tournament. We got crushed. We were arguing with each other. And we basically didn't talk to each other. We were roommates. We didn't talk to each other for like a week, weirdly walking around the house, ignoring each other. And we finally went out to a bar and just bullshitted to each other. And we're like, it's not worth ruining our friendship over this stupid game. It's not worth it. So whatever happens, happens. We're just going to have fun. This is it. And then we actually ended up doing very well. And we made it to the national debate tournament. That's how it ended. But we may not have, and it would have still been fine. It was more important that we, at the end of the day, qualifying for the national debate tournament means far less than the fact that I made a lifelong friend and we decided it's not worth getting pissy at each other over a stupid game. That's the real thing that happened. After that, I became assistant coach at Clarion University. And I remember the first time that I'm like doing my own sort of coaching, and I'm talking to all my students, and I'm still a student myself. I'm still an undergrad. I didn't graduate. And some of them are 18, 19. Some of them are my age or older that are my students. And I'm not a professor, you know. I did have a screen goal, Tigera. Maybe I'll put that up there too. Anyways, I'm like, okay, here's what you guys need to do for like your homework. Go practice this speech, or, you know, I'm going to give a speech and then I want you to write a rebuttal to it. And later that night, I'm out at the bar. There's a couple of my people that I'm coaching. So then, like, 2 days later, we're back in, and I'm like, did you guys write a rebuttal? And a couple of those people were like, no, I didn't have time. And you know what I came to realize? It wasn't just them in that particular situation. I used to say that. I started to look back on my life, particularly in college. I didn't have time. And you know what the truth is? That's a lie 95% of the time. Didn't have time. So literally, every minute of your day was filled up. You didn't have a half an hour. You didn't have the time at all. You didn't have an odd half hour where you could have did this. Or do you mean after you decided to go out drinking with your friends and watch that show you wanted to watch and go out on a date and whatever else you may do, that you didn't have time? That's what you mean. That you made a bunch of priorities. By the way, your priorities may be absolutely correct. You decided to go out to dinner with your mom. That's probably a better use of your time than practicing debate. Probably is. But you had the time if you wanted. And what I've learned in life is I do that shit all the time. I'm always making excuses. Always. It's never my fault. It's always some other bullshit's fault. Why are there left-wing streamers that I could kick their ass in debate that have way more viewers than me? Well, they do it full time. And the algorithm prioritizes them. And I get shadow banned. Yeah, all that shit may be true. But the truth is, I'm long-winded. I'm not that handsome or anything. I don't bring anything to the table like that. I'm inconsistent with how often I stream. A lot of my shit's repetitive. I have a raspy voice that isn't that pleasant to listen to. It's too high-pitched. There's an awful lot of shit that I could do better. That doesn't mean that the criticisms that I'm making, I could be the best streamer in the world. And if YouTube decides to be like, we're not going to show you on anyone's algorithm, then yeah. But the truth is there's an awful lot I could do better. And I think that a lot of times people find these things that are true. And I know people like this, loved ones I have, people I really care about, that it's like, I feel terrible because I see that they're perpetually stuck in nothing's ever my fault. Nothing. You know, you have a car wreck 10 years ago and you could trace every bad thing that's happened in your life to that. Well, the reason I didn't get that promotion at work is because of this car wreck 10 years ago. It's been one, yeah, maybe. Maybe. But what can you do? You can't control that. And so I don't know. There's this, there's this counter argument to the Chris Rufo, the people that are defending Rufo, that are saying like, well, maybe these younger people, they expect life to be handed to them on a silver platter. And I'm not saying that. Maybe there's some truth to that. Thank you, Oliver Twist. Tell your mom, thank you very much. I don't know. There's a fine line. Things are different. It's why I don't give life advice. I do, and I shouldn't. How about that? Everyone's situation is different. I don't know your situation. But I could say on average, it seems that most people talk to a lot of people, or if you talk to a lot of people, maybe you're sometimes being fed a line, or let's put it this way, you're being told things in the rosiest fashion many times from people. Well, here's my specific situation and why everything's bullshit and it's not fair to me. And you can't say no, because maybe that's true with that individual person. Damien, unfortunate smelting accident, Gershwin, thanks for the $2. Says future science Says lefty men menstruate and give birth. I don't know. All I can say is what's worked for me. What's worked for me is having real relationships in my real life and realizing how blessed and lucky I am. And I understand not everyone's in that same situation. And there are a lot of people that online communities are their community. And I understand that. But for me, so much of talking politics, and not even just that, but dealing with the online community, it could be a lot of negativity over and over, just beating you in the head. Not just the political stories, which in their very nature, because I think our government's so corrupt and shit's ridiculous. Oh, for the record, there we got you. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Science, trust the science. Yeah. And so for me, I really like sometimes disconnecting and just being like, I'm actually very lucky. I like listening to my father-in-law talk about the crazy oversized loads that he drives truck and he takes houses that are oversized loads, and he'll have all these crazy stories. Oh, the place I deliver. I like that. That's a fun night to me. It's disconnecting. I like listening to farmers talk. I like listening to all my friends that hunt talk about the huge buck that got away, so they had to shoot this little doe, and shit like that. I don't know. I like the fact that my wife's going away with friends this weekend, and I get to spend the weekend with my son. That's awesome. So much of the online world, the streaming world and shit, it's so cutthroat and competitive. And I don't know, I mentioned this a while ago, but it's like when you're so public with yourself and you're so public with all of your thoughts and opinions, you're eventually going to say some stupid shit. And I'm certainly have said many, many stupid things. Depending on who you ask, every other thing out of my mouth is stupid. And then you start to realize, like, Elon Musk seems like an impressive guy. Did he really pay someone to run his Diablo character and his whatever that other game, I don't know what the other game he's playing, that he was one of the top people. And now there's this big story breaking. Did he pay someone to run his account to level him up? Maybe. It's a childish thing if he did that and then bragged about it. Is he banning people because he's personally pissed off and argue with them? Maybe. Is Jordan Peterson someone I really liked? I love reading his 12 Rules book. And then some of the shit he says now on the Daily Wire, you're like, oh my goodness, what is this guy doing? I used to really look up to this guy. Is there a figure that you can't say that about? And then you start to think like about history. Think of the historical figures that you're like, wow, what an inspiring character. What if they had Facebook and you could see their thoughts every day? They're going to weigh in about, Theodore Roosevelt's going to weigh in about the local radio show at the time or local music. And you're like, these are some shit takes. What's up? Did I get a raid or something? Thank you for the raid, whoever raided me. We're wrapping up, but we're just talking about sort of how black-pilled it seems that so many people become, particularly in conservative circles, when you're dealing with if you're a white male, a Christian, you're dealing with all this bullshit where you get denigrated. I'm from rural America. That's the issue I focus on. We're treated like shit. We're flyover country. We cling to our guns and Bibles. The negativity that comes with focusing on that so much, and then being in the online streaming space, where it's just like, sometimes unplugging could be a very good thing. 5 days left, I hear you. Big January 20th. So for me, I just like to take stock. I've been very sick What's there to not be positive about for me right now? Getting over being sick, get to come back to streaming, get to spend time with my wife today, tomorrow, my son all weekend. Things are looking up for me. I'm very excited. It sucks that I wasn't streaming much the past couple weeks. I understand that there's a lot of crazy shit still, and there always will be. When you're in the moment, everything's crazy shit, and it is. I'm not belittling it. There is crazy stuff going on. But, all I could do is react myself and what I'm going to do and what my choices are moving forward in life. So, I don't know. I just thought, I think it's to see a lot of this infighting with the H1B stuff and stuff. And then, by the way, infight away. I don't give a shit. Other people have different reactions to me. I'm the type of person to sit there and yell and scream at you about this stuff, and then I'm not mad at you. It's just we have a difference of opinion, and I happen to be aggressive in the way that I argue a lot of times. But so many people, they take this shit personally. Like, one of the stories that I saw this, like, and I know it has to do with the algorithm and what things I've clicked on and whatever, but there's this, like, maybe you follow different stuff than me, but I don't necessarily follow video game news that much. I don't. And somehow my feed has been inundated with not just this Elon Musk, is he paying someone to run his, Path of Exile account? Okay, I don't know. But this, I don't understand this shit. I've never played the game, but there's apparently a clan in World of Warcraft, and this one dude dropped the ball, and some of his clanmates in the video game died. And now it's like this big drama thing. And I just can't help but be like, wow. Like, that, okay. And I don't begrudge anyone. I started watching wrestling again since it's been on Netflix. I watched the last 2 episodes of Raw. I used to watch it in high school all the time. I watch stupid shit. I watch Pittsburgh Pirates once in a while. They're terrible. So whatever your entertainment choices are, more power to you. But it's like so funny. It's like this is a big story. Like, I don't know. It's just, what about that Neil Gaiman character, whatever, comic book writer, big feminist? Now there's this big expose that it turns out that he's being accused of all sorts of heinous sexual stuff. It's everywhere. Entertainment's escapism, right? I watch The Last Samurai. I don't give a shit that Tom Cruise is a Scientologist. It's a good movie. And then it's like, well, we're going to inundate with contemporary political messages, everything. We're going to do this. And all your late night. I love comedy. I love stand-up. I listen to Bill Burr go out there. I think Bill Burr's funny as shit. He comes out and says, oh, there's fires. Well, these fires and everyone's saying there's mismanagement. You don't know shit. I think it ran very well. Yeah, you don't know shit either, Bill Burr. And trust the experts. The experts know what they're doing. Yeah, that ship's fucking sailed. Along with, and all the scientists say that it didn't come from a lab and that we need to lock down and that you're non-essential and COVID's really serious. But it's more serious, fighting racism, and that the protests are mostly peaceful, and that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake, and that Trump's a stooge of Russia. The experts told us that. Go fuck yourself. I'm not saying Bill Burr doesn't have his right to an opinion. It's fine. And if I was a stand-up comedian, I'd be talking about politics. In fairness, I got into politics talking about it before I did comedy. But I'm just saying, it's like, where is that escapism anymore? It's one of the things we have to deal with as a society moving forward. In a world where everyone has a platform to publicly put their entire life, including their opinions on everything, from politics to religion, to food, to music, to movies, and all of us are voluntarily engaging in a huge portion of that, that inevitably society will change and all the things we used to, you didn't give a shit what Larry Zonka's politics were when he's rushing for the fucking Dolphins. But now you know what many of your favorite athletes think politically. You know what LeBron thinks. And it's not to say that LeBron doesn't have that right or that he's even doing anything out of the normal. That's the normal. It's how my friends who are lefties think about me. That's why I don't post on Facebook anymore. I used to put all of my videos on Facebook. Then I had all these friends that were lefty or family members that are lefty that are furious with me. Because it's like, it's one thing if it's just, hey, I see Rob at the reunion or whatever, and he's funny, and we talked about stupid shit we used to do back in the day, and, It's another thing when I have to see videos of that prick every day talking about how Trump's awesome and Biden's terrible or Clinton was terrible. I don't know. It's a different world. It really is. But, alrighty. I'm going to leave you tonight. Tomorrow we're going to talk about more substantive politics. We'll talk, like I said, about the James O'Keefe video of a CIA employee that was talking about meeting with former generals to stymie Trump. We'll talk about the supposed peace negotiations and deal that came forward, supposedly with Trump at the forefront or as a key player with the Israel-Palestine situation. Friday, we're going to do a call-in show, but it's going to be an early show. Tomorrow I'll be streaming around 7 p.m., maybe a little earlier. Friday, it's going to be an early morning show because I got a doctor appointment, and then I got to drive my wife to Pittsburgh and get to hang out with my man all night until my man's older. He's 4. He just turned 4. I'm not going to stream while I'm his sole caretaker in the home. He needs my attention. I'll tell you a story about my man turning 4 real quick. So he wakes up January 9th. He's 4, and I'm like, yeah, buddy, 4 years old. I got home a little late, but he was slept in, so I was at work, and I come home, and I'm like, you're 4. You're such a big boy. And he's like, I don't want to be 4. I want to be 3. And so for the entire day of his birthday, everyone's calling like, wow, 4 years old. And he's like, no, I want to be 3. He's over it now. Now he's happy to be 4. But the day of his birthday, he was not ready to be 4. He wanted to be 3. And so I thought it was funny because you have all these people, grandma calls, oh, what a big boy, happy birthday, you're 4 years old. No, I'm 3. It's like, just go with it, just go with it. So that was my man. And then it's funny, as an old fart myself, 40 years old, I was like, you know how old I am? I'm 40. Isn't that a crazy number? He's like, yeah. So, yeah, unfortunate smelting. I think a lot of that's true. Like Trump won, so you're seeing the engines rev up on the left. I used to say this, by the way. Go back to 2022, 2023, before the 2024 election cycle. All of these left-wing streamers, they were all doing like red pill content. Oh, Andrew Tate. Oh, stupid drama shit. And I was like, it's because they can't defend Biden's record. They have nothing to say about that. And I was like, if Trump would win again, then all of a sudden they'll be all in on politics again. Didn't give a shit. They were more than happy to tell you, oh, Biden's cognitive issues. What are you talking about? There's no evidence of that. Pfft. Anyways, inflation, border security, whatever. Anyways, back to what Andrew Tate said. And now they're just, whoa, we're revved up, we're amped up. So I think it's quite funny. But all right, we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you all for joining. Like I said, check out YouTube. I'm going to be putting shorts up and regular content that's going to be up there every day. We're trying, maybe I'll take Sundays off, but other than that, we're going to be trying to put that up every day, including tomorrow. I'm feeling healthier now, looking to get into streaming at least 3-4 nights a week. Yeah, I'm not doing so hot on Twitch. swallow, but doing better on YouTube. 82 on Twitch, 46 on traditional YouTube, and I don't know on the YouTube Shorts format how many people I have watching, so we'll check that out later. But thank you guys so much. We will see you all tomorrow around 7 p.m. As always, have a good one.